This is the Development Review Board meeting, for May 6th. We will go through the items on the agenda in the order in which that they appear. All of the communications have been posted online, correct? Great, so we have two items on the consent agenda. First one is CP-25-92, 24 Grant Street. We have the applicants. No?
Don't see any hand raised online.
Let's skip that one for now, since we got another, and we'll come back to it. Give them a minute. ZP-22-19951 Elmwood Avenue. Do you have the applicant? Would come up here. You guys can all sit up if you like.
Sit with you.
So this item is recommended for consent. So are there any objections from the board for treating this as a consent item?
I came to speak on it. I know other people that were gonna try to speak on this.
Yeah, I would get into that. So then my next question is, are there people that, from the public that would like to speak on this item? I've heard from you, and then is there anyone online as well?
I know if someone who's planning to join online, they might be a couple minutes late from Mackenzie House.
You would also like to speak on this item? Okay.
Unless it can, like, if it can be consent, great, but if not, I'll see that.
When we open the public hearing.
Yeah.
So it was marked on a consent agenda item, but we will open a public hearing. There are people here to speak on it. So can I get all those who are interested in speaking in ZP 22-19951 Elmwood Street to raise their right hand and repeat after me? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter under consideration is true and correct under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes.
Yes, all right. So this is the application of the City of Burlington for the time extension for an emergency shelter, including 30 shelter pods, community resource center, and a bathhouse. We have a limited review under 24 VSA 4413. Obviously, this project has come before us before. It was granted an approval for 30 pods for a period of 3 years, and they'd like to extend it for an additional year. So you collectively are the city. How's it going and why just a year?
It's going well. My girl, outcomes, and just a few minutes, I don't have this right now. But overall, operations are going well. We have been working in very deep collaboration with Champlain Housing Trust as our operating partner, and have had consistent two full-time case managers present, both employed by the Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity have been present, and they have made countless referrals to employment services, medical services, substance use, treatment services and recovery supports, and a number of folks have been housed successfully from the Elmwood shelter. So overall, things have been going really well. And I don't know if any of you have gone by, but it's still, I visit from time to time, and the site still looks just as great as it did when we opened. I think that the shelter guys there take a lot of pride in living there and seeing them really, really happy to be in a safe place while they work toward the next step.
I would just add, I'm Brian Pine, the director of CEDO, that early on there were concerns raised by adjacent property owner, and they specifically pointed out that there was more loitering and activity taking place on their property right adjacent to the shelter. And so through, meetings with them and discussions, we agreed to put up security cameras monitoring their parking lot, because there's plenty of surveillance cameras monitoring the activity in the shelter, but they felt we needed something pointed out, which was pretty unusual, and took a little work to get it through, to get it approved, really. But we did do that, and the events tapered off pretty quickly on that property. There was a concern to the property to the south that the fence material that we used was not sturdy and durable enough, and didn't provide enough screening. And while it didn't happen on the timeline that would have been ideal, we did get installed a brand new stockade, not stockade, I guess it's even more substantial than your typical stockade with solid wood, much like you see on the front of the property. That's all along that south border that faces the McKenzie House property. So that was installed. It was in December, Zach? December we got that done. So those are some of the upgrades that were made to deal with impact.
The reason for the 1-year permit, do you want to take that one? Or Scott, maybe would be helpful?
I think I understand. I'm just
Okay.
gonna confirm that with Scott. Scott, the way. Is the Scott project?
Yeah, yep.
The way we approved it, it was 2 1-year time extensions, so they asked for 1 year at a time, right?
They can have up to 2 1-year time extensions, and they are seeking one of those right now.
The first of the, okay, correct, understood.
This question, how long do tenants or residents live there? Is there a time limit on how long they can live there?
There is not a time limit for how long folks can stay at the shelter. We see people, while everyone is actively engaged in, case management, our countywide data tells us that it takes roughly 270 to 340 days for households to be able to, from the time that they enter homelessness until the time that they exit from permanent housing. So we see folks stay there roughly, I would say, without having the data, anywhere from 4 to 10 months, I would say, probably. And sometimes folks are coming in because it's a barrier shelter. And once they kind of settle, then they're much more, interested in accessing, recovery services or employment services and managing medical issues that have come up. And aside from that, we've also had a number of other providers on site. We actually ran a pilot program last winter with funding from the Department of Health, where we brought 2 nurses to the 3 low barrier shelters in Burlington at the time, 5 nights a week. And they saw a large number of their houses, very successful pilot project. And now the state is actually based on that will be having an additional grant funding opportunity that we're applying for with the community health center to embed more medical services there. So
I would note that your original approval does have a condition 6 that says overnight stays by any individual are limited to 180 consecutive days with an extension of up to 60 days. So I would 10 months. Someone at the shelter for 10 months may exceed that condition. Just you may want to pay attention to that.
You can speak to that too, but there has also been some changes at the state level that that don't allow for length of stay to be considered.
That may be the case,
Yeah.
and I'll let the city attorney or anyone else deal
Scott
with
is
that.
Scott's gonna speak to that.
Yeah, Scott.
I was just going to say that there is a subsequent permit to amend that condition based on the change in statute.
Did we approve that, or was that administrative? I don't remember it.
That was administrative following the statutory change.
Got it. Strike that. It wasn't in our packet.
It's in the permit history, AJ.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yep.
I missed that, I just looked at the original in discussion, sorry. Okay, well, then there you go. Yep, got it. Anybody else want to speak on this application?
Can I speak from here?
Um,
I'm
We can
fine
clear
with
some
that.
back.
yeah, why don't you clear and come back? Yep.
Hello, my name is Kelly Devine. I'm the Executive Director of the Burlington Business Association. I was pretty actively involved in the first round of this when it happened 3 years ago. And I'm not necessarily here to get the board to not approve the renewal of it. I'm glad it's only 1 year, but I do think that it's important to take note that we have repeatedly tried to get information on the success of this. We've tried to get reports. We've tried to connect with the management on behalf of downtown community members and business owners who have concerns, and it's been increasingly almost nearly impossible to get meetings to discuss the concerns. The last meeting we had was a year ago when I was told by the team that they had housed a total of 2 people. I did not know that the 180-day provision had been relieved. That was my understanding. There's reports of people staying there for 11 months. We were originally told that this was going to be a temporary place to permanently house people, that that there would be less negative activity in the downtown. That most certainly hasn't happened. That doesn't mean it's directly connected to the pods. I have written evidence of the fencing of stolen goods in that property. I've personally watched stolen goods go in and out of that property. This is after the last year. And we just try to get reports out on the success of the project and seem to not be able to find it. I even today went to the city's frequently asked questions page, which clearly hasn't been updated with any data, and they have link to the management plan, which is broken. I'm just trying to get information to my members about this project because people believe it has a negative impact on the downtown, and I can't answer that question unless I know exactly what's going on. I know that the COTS recently opened their temporary shelter at the old Social Security building and was told by them that they housed 42 people within the 3-4 months that they've been open. So I don't understand why there seems to be, in the first year, 32 people left the property, 25 were asked to leave, another 5 left voluntarily, and 2 were housed. I just have a hard time really chalking that up to a success. There has been evidence of active drug dealing in that property as well, and I know it has an impact on the neighbors despite fencing. Now, in the original proposal, we were told that, they were going to connect people with services. Referrals tell people about services. They don't necessarily ensure that people get connected to services. So I'd like some more reporting on how many people get into treatment, how many people take advantage of mental health services. I did a tour today of the mental health urgent care clinic up at the UVM-MC campus and found out they've seen 300 people in 7 months. So there was a resource there that we know is being underutilized. I'd like to know what successes people are making. We're giving people a valuable place to live at no cost to them, at a cost to the community. And I just don't see any numbers of number of people get into treatment, number of people that take advantage of mental health, and number of people that get housed. That's frustrating. Now, the last page of this frequently asked questions that I printed out today, it says, CEDO is committed to working with community partners, community members, shelter staff, guests, businesses. It says it right there. And I don't get the sense that we're working together because requests for information meetings go unresponded to. It says in this frequently asked questions that's published today, individuals are limited to 180 consecutive days. So even this information that they have online is not up to date. Right? Will there be a process for the community to voice their concerns? Regular meetings of the Elmwood Shelter Support Group for mediated resolution. I haven't heard anything. I was on the original list, went to one, haven't heard anything about anything like that. It says specifically that how will success be evaluated? By transition to permanent housing placement. I don't see that happening. The last data that I got was in 2024. This was a story that was run by Digger 1 year in. Are they successful? It talked about a guy who lived there for 11 months. If this isn't going to be a place to put people into housing, it's going to be a place where people are long-term warehoused, let's have a conversation about that and let's make it clear to the people who are concerned, who are in the abutting neighborhood. And really just using this opportunity as a way to make it abundantly clear that my requests for information, which were written in the conditions of the permit, are not being met. Thank you.
We have some other members of the public who I think want to be heard on this. Introduce yourself.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Carrie. I am the Field Services Director for the Agency of Human Services out of the Secretary's Office. The Agency of Human Services, I serve the Burlington and Middlebury districts, which is loosely Addison and Chittenden County. Thank you so much for having this hearing. As you may or may not know, today is Homelessness Awareness Day. And I really appreciate the efforts that this zoning board has, developmental review board has made to support various different remedies to homelessness in our state. As you may be aware, the Agency of Human Services is greatly invested in various forms of shelter, increasing shelter capacity in the state. We do not have adequate housing across the state, and it is our goal that each Vermonter has a home, a permanent home of their own. In the interim, sheltering strategies are necessary to reduce suffering. Low barrier shelters like the Elmwood Shelter Pod play an important role in the continuum of care of homelessness in our state, and especially in Chittenden County. As you may know, people experiencing unsheltered homelessness face increased health barriers and concerns compared to the general community. And as such, have to meet daily needs, especially medical needs, have to rely on emergency services to a much higher degree than the general population. The stability of places that provide low barrier shelter greatly reduces this impact on emergency services, reduces this impact on our hospitals, on our ER. And not only does this reduce the cost to all of us as Vermonters supporting our healthcare system, but it also reduces suffering of those who are forced to only access healthcare through emergency services. Projects like the Elmwood Shelter Pod also help to reestablish trust in a system that often is fragmented and really creates barriers to trusting each other in community. And that's one of the key roles of low barrier shelter. It's important to note that low barrier shelter does also frequently serve people who've been unsuccessful in other shelter environments. Therefore, the metrics should be different of what success looks like in low barrier shelters. They create unique environments that sometimes serve folks who are the hardest to house. It's vital, as you know, to address both the short-term shelter options, but also the long-term solutions that I know you all are so invested in, as well as the surrounding communities. And I really thank you for addressing these efforts simultaneously. Thanks.
Appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I guess we turn to staff for specifics on this shelter,
Yes.
right? You're not giving any
I
specifics.
can't,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll verify.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else here in person who wants to be heard on this? You have different applications, sir? Red shirt, no, you're not at this one, okay. We have a couple people online. I see Evan Langfeld with his hand up. Evan, do you want to speak on this one?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
Great. Evan Langfeld, I'm the president and CEO of O'Brien Brothers. We own the Mackenzie House property that's immediately adjacent to the pod site. The Mackenzie House property consists of 36 units of low-income senior and disabled housing, and then another 5 units in the renovated historic Victorian home that is low-income families. So, parents living with young children. And that's a two-story building that looks directly out over this. It's about 18 inches off of the property line. And so I'll say a couple things. We participated in the permitting process way back when this originally went through. We had concerns. We didn't appeal the process, and we stated that, we thought that, this was being done with good intentions. Obviously, there's a problem that needs to be solved here. I think we still have that same perspective, but we've had, a little bit of time to live with this situation. And I would say that it has changed over time. But to start off with, I would say it was very rocky. Immediately after the pods went into place, we had a serious uptick in bad behavior that was taking place on our site. And what I would attribute that to is likely a combination of both folks that initially moved into the pods, but also the gravitational force that the pods have on other sort of bad influences within the community that gravitated towards the pods for drug dealing purposes, and then the gravitational impacts that those dealers then had on other residents of the community that had nothing to do with the pods. And because we were the closest property, they set up on our site, either temporarily or in many cases pitching tents and camping out on our site. And candidly, we did not receive much responsiveness or even a ton of empathy from the city, which is a little bit disappointing. And I think that has changed over time. I think Champlain Housing Trust in particular, I do want to give them some kudos. I think that they have done as good of a job as possible dealing with sort of a challenging situation. But I do recall way back when you guys first permitted this, there were certain conditions that were put in place, one of which was that it's temporary. Again, I'm not here trying to dissuade you from extending this because I don't really think there is another option necessarily. But I do feel compelled to bring up that when you levy conditions upon whether it's the city or a private developer, the city in this case, those conditions need to be lived up to. The most basic of which was that we had asked for screening because again, we have a vulnerable population that's living immediately next door, but it's also, it's the very minimum that could have been done and would certainly be asked of a private developer trying to do something on this site. The screening actually wasn't put into place until this past fall, which is well in excess of the timeline that was provided. And so, that kind of stuck in our craw a little bit. I think that the responsiveness and communication from the city hasn't been great over time. It's kind of ebbed and flowed, and I know people are busy and people are doing other things, but again, this has a direct and significant impact on the neighbors living next door. And this isn't a case where these neighbors that are living next door, they can pack up and move to a different location. These folks are living in a HUD subsidized property. It's incredibly well maintained. We routinely score the highest points that HUD gives nationally, but it still has an impact on them. It's impacting their parking lots, impacting their quality of life. When you come out and there's, human feces on the sidewalk, there's needles scattered everywhere. People have had their cars broken into. We have had residents be assaulted on site. I can't pinpoint that to the pods, so I'm not going to pinpoint it to the pods, but it is a problem and we need to have better responsiveness, not just from city administration folks that are involved in managing the pods, but we also need more responsiveness from the police department when there are situations that are urgent. And I know that's kind of a citywide problem and it's a resource and staffing problem, but it's a real problem that is a direct result of the pods being located on this site. And I know that Chief Burke graciously met with two members of our staff this morning, and I appreciated him doing that. Chief Murad was very responsive to us. But the reality is, again, when we're having urgent issues over there with a vulnerable population that in large part stems from this use being located immediately adjacent to it, we're simply asking that, we have more presence by BPD on site, patrols going through multiple times a night. And, just as a follow-up to that, we've spent about $50,000 of our cash putting security services in place as a direct result of this going into place. Same security service that Decker Towers has that the city subsidizes. We don't get any subsidy for that. We pay for it because we think it's the right thing to do to protect our residents, but it's not enough. And so we would simply ask that if you are going to approve this, which again, we're not saying you shouldn't. We're just asking that the city pay more attention to the fact that this clearly did and does have an impact on our residents next door and has an impact on all of the neighbors around us. And so we would ask for more presence by, city personnel that are managing the pods, but most importantly, BPD. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. Anybody else want to be heard on this? Once, twice, okay. City folks, do you want to respond to what you heard? Don't feel compelled. But Brad would like you to respond.
There was a lot said, so I'm not sure what part is most important to address, so why don't we try to.
Well, I think there's a few things that I heard, and maybe Brad has some others. I wonder what our abilities are in adding a, in a 1-year extension. But, there was some concerns, I think, raised by both Ms. Devine and Mr. Langfeld about responsiveness and communication. And I know that was part of our discussion. I remember going through this in 2022. And so I think there are some concerns about communications and responsiveness with neighbors. And I think it'd be appropriate for us to hear that. Brad, did you have?
Yeah, I think some of the data on people transitioning through duration that some of that history would be good to present now.
Sure.
Yes, that was what I was saying.
Sarah can lead with the data, I think, and I'll
I
try to post that,
definitely
so.
can. First I would say that, I'm not sure if there's been a miscommunication, but we haven't received any, I personally haven't received, any outreach, from folks around, outcomes reports. I'm happy to report that. I pulled it up right here. Now, it's not.
Where do those go? Do those get sent to the city? Does the city post
So
those? Is there
we don't-
follow-up?
We don't post those, so we have a quarterly report that we prepare for the Agency of Human Services that measures particular, and in my opinion, fairly vague outcomes. And so we actually, as the sort of grant administrator here, we subcontract with the operating partner. We ask them to report on a more robust outcome matrix. And I collect that data from them on a quarterly basis and we compile that. And it's, if anybody wants to see it, I'd be happy to send it to you. I'm not posting it, necessarily on the website. It's just like to the point that somebody made around just like staff time of being able to, update this, but we do have data and we're happy to share that. So we track data, based on connections to, mental health, substance use treatment and supports, medical care, and legal services. And over the time that the Elmwood shelter has been operating since February of 2023, 27 folks have access to mental health supports. 22 people have access to substance use treatment supports. 38 have access to medical care. 13 have access to legal services and 29 have access to employment, education, and training services. And those are direct connections from the on-site case management. In terms of folks who have been housed from the Elmwood shelter, over the course of operations, 15 people have been housed. So which is a great, I would consider a great measure of success as well.
And let me just add that the case, the theory of this case was based on some assumptions at the time, which unfortunately did not end up being accurate assumptions. One of those was that we didn't have the information at the time that the state's approach to sheltering people through the motel voucher system would shift dramatically. And so as prioritization for housing folks had to go to those who were being exited from those shelters, those who were in the Elmwood shelter were basically not able to access housing because there's only so many available housing units in the coordinated entry system. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a very specific, delivery system that ensures someone goes from homelessness to shelter to housing. And it's unfortunate that period became much lengthier. And a lot of delays occurred during that time. So that was, as well as the number of people experiencing homelessness went considerably, it increased significantly from the time the project was developed. So that's a regional, national, statistic that we are dealing with right here locally. So we had limited supply, constrained supply of units for people to move into due to changes at the state level. We also had extreme growth in those experiencing homelessness, and the rate of housing production just isn't where it needs to be, not just in Burlington, but in our region to sort of absorb and provide that housing. We had major delays on projects which we thought were going to lead to homeless dedicated units. City Place was supposed to have homeless dedicated units. That did not happen. There's a number of examples of where our production, so the solution being move people out into housing, where there was a constraint in that, the bottleneck in that system. That really impacted the ability to place people.
I would add that I think that we are going to continue to see these, the length of time homeless, and we measure that as a community-wide outcome related to homelessness, that we are going to see those times continue to increase. Not only because of the lack of permanent affordable housing and a delayed production around that, but also because of some of the proposed cuts at the federal level relating to HUD rental assistance. There has been threats to, the Section 8 program as a whole, which provides a subsidy, that even though there is an affordable unit, vast majority of these folks, and I don't have data in front of me, but I would wager that near 100% of the people who are housed from Elmwood were only able to be housed because they have both a permanently affordable unit and a rental subsidy. So I think as we see those changes at the national level and those cuts happen, we're going to see a trickle down effect. Our own Burlington Housing Authority, in response to level funding for this year, they're still under continuing resolution. They have indicated that they do not anticipate issuing a single tenant-based rental subsidy for the remainder of the calendar year. So I think that, as we see, that's pretty much a death sentence for us, in the ending homelessness arena. So I think that as we see these cuts on the federal level, there's a direct impact, as we all know, on the local level, especially related to exits from emergency shelter.
What happens if, obviously, they say you got 3 years of the shelter, and 1 year, first you got 30 pods, you got 60 or 70 people that have gone out of the shelter, not into housing, right? They're going back on the street.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's like that is, we have been getting internally, and I can let Zach's really take a lead with this, but planning for permanent affordable housing and permanent supportive housing to be on at that location. We've had some conversations, and done a decent amount of work, planning for how to transition this. The intention is not to operate shelters don't end homelessness. So the intention is not to just permanently operate shelters across the city. The intention is to make sure that we're giving folks this safe landing spot while we wait for resources to become available for that.
So then the goal is not, when you have a homeless person, the goal is not then to have them be a housed person in the end?
Oh, the goal is absolutely for them to be housed.
So given its location and this particular pod's location, and the fact that it's intended to be a low barrier place, two questions, what is the biggest barrier to a person coming in to end up being housed, and what is your long-term goal for this location?
So two-part question. I would take the first part, and then maybe Zach, you can speak to sort of the longer term planning that we've been doing. So when someone enters, first of all, I should say that we see Elmwood as one of the most successful shelters within the county and also within the state. So we host members from the Agency of Human Services Secretary's office to come in, provide tours, you know, at the Elmwood of the Elmwood shelter, and so that they can determine how to replicate this as a model in other areas of the state. So it's a very successful model of shelter. What makes it low barrier is that folks can access the shelter without meeting particular criteria that some shelters require. And when we think of low barrier, I think a lot of people talk about substance use and sobriety and, you know, people have to be in recovery and this kind of thing. The reality is that low barrier can mean any number of things. It could mean that somebody doesn't need to have a photo ID to enter the shelter. It could mean that somebody has a pet with them. It could be that you're, you know, allowing an opportunity for a opposite sex couple to cohabitate in the same shelter unit. All of these are barriers that we see from other shelters. So low barrier doesn't just mean substance use. I want to make that really clear. And our hope for everyone who comes in is that we can reconnect them to services. There are approximately 250 people on the wait list for the Elmwood shelter. That's far and away the highest wait list of any shelter in Chittenden County and I would wager statewide. So we are working with outreach teams to make sure that we're connecting folks to resources from the minute that they come on site. And some of that is just building trust with people and helping them to feel safe. When folks are in a tent, they have no way to secure their belongings. They experience assault and theft and trauma every single day. I mean, I see people will put like a little luggage padlock on their tent zippers, like, you think that's gonna stop somebody from stealing your stuff, you know, and like the feeling that people have when they enter the shelter unit of like, oh my gosh, I can go to the doctor and lock the door on my shelter unit and nobody's gonna steal my stuff. Like that feeling is so, for the rest of us that haven't experienced that, is like to actually see somebody have that feeling is like the most incredible thing ever. And so I think that it's like, in some cases, obviously permanent housing is the goal. And in some cases, it's as basic as helping the person to feel safe from the start.
I just want, before
Sorry, that was
Zach talks
long-winded,
about, before Zach talks about new development, I want to just answer, John, I think you asked, what's the biggest barrier for folks to move?
Yeah.
It's really a combination of the units, the subsidies available to move folks into. It really comes down to that supply and the assistance, because moving into a unit that costs $2,400 a month isn't gonna be an option for folks, not gonna work, so that's the challenge.
And Zach Nursing here with CEDO. As far as the future of the site goes, we're at a very conceptual level right now, working with CHT as a development partner on the property to look at what permanent, supportive, and affordable housing program and building we could offer there at the site. That would mean the removal of the pods eventually, and redeveloping something there that could have approximately 30 units of permanently affordable housing in there, a staffed building with similar services that we have today. But again, a lot of this is conceptual. It is our hope for the site, and it ultimately does have to follow a schedule that fits within CHT's program and when they can actually do work and develop sites, because they already have kind of a playbook, a roster of what they can develop at certain properties where they have projects. And you know, this is in their queue. We don't know when, because the economy of the world is changing every day. So, but there is a future vision for the.
So there was concerns about others accessing this data. It seems like you're saying that this data is not available on any website, but if folks reach out, they can access it. There are also concerns about regular meetings that were maybe can be held, or some sort of meeting arrangement Were there ever meetings are there?
Yeah, in the first year, we held several meetings, they were, the invitations were to anybody who wanted to come, really. And those were held at the Old North End Community Center at the former St. Joseph's School. It was mixed attendance. At one meeting, residents came, sheltered guests came in a fairly large number. A few neighbors would come to most of them. We had a follow-up meeting with business community, at least, and we had one in Contois. And, I will certainly acknowledge that the follow-through on the meetings and the communication regarding those community forums was not adequate. And, I'll take ownership of that as the director of the department. That's something we definitely could have done better.
Make it happen. Yeah. Okay, well, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. And we're going to deliberate on this tonight. So, thank you. It's a robust discussion. We have to be mindful of our limitations for 4413 and that this is a one-year extension of something we've already granted. It's been an engaging discussion. We'll take under advisement.
I think we've heard that.
Do we have an applicant for 24 Grant Street yet? Still no.
See anyone online, AJ? I mean, it is consent. If the board's okay with that and nobody's there to testify, you could act on it. If the board isn't okay and or there are folks to testify, it should be deferred.
Is anyone here? No one's here for Grand Street. Okay, what does the board want to do? Was marked on a consent agenda item. Typically the applicant, we asked the applicant to be here. His consent didn't seem particularly challenging for consent. Would anybody on the board object to approving it as a consent agenda item? Fine either way. I typically ask the applicant to be here. So my inclination is to continue it till the next meeting and ask the applicant to, show up. I move that we continue 24 Grand Street ZP 2592 to the next available meeting and communicate with the applicant that they need to be there, or we reserve the right to deny their application. Second. All those in favor? All right. The next item on our agenda, 2935 Church Street. This is the Nick and Marcy development, Ryan Nick's fence. Last we saw you, Mr. Nick, we continued it because the fence you proposed seemed to be stumbling over some variance criteria, and we thought maybe a different fence would be approvable and that perhaps you could provide some other designs. The staff report reflects that we don't have any other designs. I turn to you, what would you like us to do?
So today.
By the way, you've been sworn in? No?
No, I have not.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear that testimony you're about to give is true and correct under the pains and penalties of perjury?
So sworn.
All right. What would you like us to do?
So over the past month or so, Director Gustin and I have, exchanged some ideas about what a workable gate could be. And I want to appreciate Scott's time in that, and efforts. Unfortunately, the gate designs that we discussed were not viable in our opinion for that alleyway. The alleyway with the dumpsters is very narrow and trucks already do not have much room on either side. We discussed a sort of Z-style folding gate or like an accordion style And I talked with our property manager about that, and his response to me was, I would like that proposal to be proposed at 5 a.m. on a January morning. The rolling gate, when there's a lot of snow, is easy to use, as easy as a gate can be. And, our contention is not that it's a perfect or nice gate, it's a functional gate. And today we removed the barbed wire from the gate, and so the offending wire atop the gate is no longer there. I have a photo of that, if that's of interest to the board. Also, it strikes me that this particular style or the height is in the first lot layer, which is technically in front of the building facade. But the building is on the sidewalk, just out of view of this photo. And also the building to the left is also on the fronts on the sidewalk. And so, while by the letter of first lot layer, it may be in the first lot layer, we think it's effectively in the second lot layer. It's set back from the sidewalk. It's not offending anyone. And there's no other gate style that would be, functional to, secure the alleyway.
You removed the barbed wire, do you plan on replacing it with any other sort of fence like copper?
If you would like one, we will put.
Oh, no,
Yeah, I think it's the other way around.
It changes the height.
Yes, no, we are not contemplating that.
Would you be amenable to covering up the barbed wire?
Or the
It's not.
chain link.
Chain link, sorry.
Sure. That little green grassy stuff in it, I would argue it make it more prominent and visible from the sidewalk, but if that will get us there, then God bless.
Is the purpose of the gate to prevent vehicles or prevent people from going in the alley?
If we could bring up the photo I sent you.
That's the next one.
The one you just most recently.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. So that's the gate today, and what we're trying to prevent is what you can see on the state building on the lower left of photo there. That would otherwise be behind our dumpsters. Could you zoom in, Garrett? It's
Oh, I got you. Yeah, okay.
So, and the height of the gate is where.
Yeah, I think we could have gotten away with, or it would have been allowable under the code to have a 4-foot gate here, but we wanted the additional height to, prevent people from jumping over it. When you gotta go, you gotta go.
What's happening on the left? It's a short piece of gate.
Yeah, I think it's something it's where we lock it.
But prevent them going around there.
Yeah, and also, yeah.
So in order for a truck to back into the loading dock, you have to move that
Gates.
container.
Well, the gate slides right now. It doesn't.
But then you'd have to move that container out of there for a truck to back into the loading gate?
No, the container thankfully fits both the truck and the.
There's enough room.
Yeah, there's enough, thank you.
Okay.
What is the height of the fence right now with barbed wire?
If we take off those posts, it's about 6 feet.
Is this against the form-based code? Is that the number that we're using?
Yep. In the first lot layer, a 4-foot fence is allowable. And that's a 6-foot fence,
Can I just,
technically
so
in the first one.
the property is both buildings on both sides, or your property
No,
is
just to the right. That's the state building, which is not subject to zoning.
Can the alley be accessed from Pearl Street?
Through a series of other gates and fences, technically, yeah.
Okay, anybody else want to speak on this one? Yes, by all means.
What to say, Mike? I'm actually a tenant in the building, so I'm speaking from personal experience. I will say with my Burlington Business Association hat on, I've started some conversation with city council about maybe doing some kind of temporary easement on the fence ordinance until we get through this next phase of public safety challenges downtown. But I work in that building, and I will support what Ryan said, which is just beyond the gate is an actual side door. It doesn't face Cherry Street, it's on the side. So there's a whole section of the building that's a good 6 or 7 feet long, and many of us come in and out of that building. I sometimes work late at night, and before this gate went up, it was, sometimes, I don't want, Ryan already showed a picture that was fairly graphic, but I could go into stories I'm not going to, but coming out of that building as a woman, I parked down in the downtown garage, there would be stuff going on in that alley that I found, fairly threatening and concerning, not necessarily people using it as a bathroom, but people could hide back there behind those dumpsters I would witness people using drugs, dealing drugs, exchanging stolen goods, sex acts. I've kind of seen it all back there. It's just the way that alley is configured, and you asked about Pearl. So there's this sort of warrant back there that goes between Pearl and Cherry. And before all these systems went up, it was a convenient place for people to hide. And since this has gone up, it's been a much safer experience for the people that work in the building. It includes my organization and the entire team from Outdoor Gear Exchange that constantly goes back and forth between that and the store. And I think that we really need to think in terms of the pressure that downtown is under right now toward public safety. I hope, from one tenant that you'll consider granting a variance and working with the owner.
Question for you.
Yeah.
If you go out the cycle, do you have a key fob or something to open the gate? Is that what happens?
No, the gate, here's the gate.
Yeah.
Right, here's the gate, and the side door is over here. So when he talks about that being set back,
Oh, okay.
there's a door here, there's the front of the building.
Yeah.
And then there's that side building you
So
can
you
see.
come out in front of the gate.
Yes,
But
nobody can
It
access.
keeps things from happening.
Yes, nobody
Okay.
can access the gate other than the building owner and CVS.
And it's really for vehicles.
That alleyway is the loading dock for CVS and
Okay.
you can't even get to the trash right now, but it's better than it was before, so I just wanted to share
So
that.
this is less elegant issue that we had for the Ronald McDonald House. Same issue.
Yes, we really are seeing it, all over town. I've spent some time looking at gates and fences just to understand it from a community perspective. And, while it's not ideal to have a downtown that has a lot of gates and fencing, there's a area of study called crime prevention through environmental design. And that's a way of stopping behavior by putting, preventive barriers and other things up. Even in some cases, music works, and the more we can do that, the more we'll actually deter some of this behavior that seems to be going on unchecked.
Or it's a question of can we give a variance in this thing, that's the issue, but it's also, and this is irrelevant thing, but in terms of downtown, it's pretty ugly. And is that, if these are the kind of measures we have to do, should we be doing them better? So they're not quite such a, that they sort of say, boy, we're desperate, we'll do anything we can to stop this goddamn stuff from happening. Maybe that's the truth, but it's unfortunate that it looks that way.
I call our neighborhood chain link for.
I have a question for staff on this, just to confirm on why this is considered the first lot layer, just looking at the entirety of the building, it's like the farthest. It's a setback section, obviously the photos have just shown the setback section, but the property itself does include sod that is closer to the sidewalk.
So the first lot layer, Caitlin, is between the front of the building and the curb.
And so it doesn't matter what the front of the building looks like shape wise, anything that is the front defines the first lot layer?
It refers to the facade, so if you're getting at the loading bay, I would say the loading bay is not part of the facade.
So I'm looking at the Google Earth map. And I just ask you to make sure I have this right. Can you see that?
Yep.
So this is the state building here.
Yes.
And then there's an indent where your driveway is.
Yep.
And then there's this little cutout of the building.
Yes, it's
Right.
good up there.
And then your building is also bumps out and goes all the way to the sidewalk.
That's correct.
And this is all your building too.
Yes.
And that's the only little cutout, this thing where the one tree is the only thing that's set back.
Yes.
Any more questions for the applicant?
Might ask Scott also about the fencing on the state building. Can you tell me a little bit more about how that was approved and why it meets the zoning ordinance?
So the state building is subject to 4413 under the statute, which is not a zoning exemption, but it's a limitation. And that limitation basically precludes design review. So the state can have chain link, church could have chain link, schools could have chain link. This property is none of the above. So the prohibition on chain link would apply.
Start a church in the alley. I'll do it.
We do have a school in the building.
We have a school in the building.
Does the school want the fence?
I bet they do.
They should make the request.
A couple other hands might have been raised as well. Speak on this.
Okay, we have two other people online to speak on this. We have Mello Grant and Sharon Busher, whoever you want to enable first. Scott, go ahead.
I get to speak too? Okay, I was just gonna pipe in
Oh,
with.
yeah, sorry, I thought your hand was up, but I thought you had already shared your piece. By all means, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it was up. Just pointing out that variance is predicated on impossibility of compliance with the standard. And the standards can be complied with here. As we talked about last time, even shifting this a foot back behind the front of the building opens up the door to chain link material and 8 feet in height. To leave it exactly where it is, we'd have to do a different gate design. So a swinging gate or a folding gate, but it would be stuck with a 4-foot height limit. So there's a few ways to comply here. That was my only point.
Why you can't do that? I understand you don't want to do that. But
Yeah.
when we're looking at the ordinance, we've got these strict requirements.
I understand.
So is there a reason you physically can't move it back?
Well,
I understand the 4 foot's not gonna meet the need.
yeah. Well, if we move the existing gate a foot back, it would slide into the building.
Well, you'd have to have a swinging gate.
Then it's either swinging onto the sidewalk, preventing pedestrian traffic, or further into the alley where you'd have to move the dumpsters. And then once you swing the gate open, you have to make sure it doesn't swing closed to hit the trucks moving in. It's an ease of use thing. Same thing with the full, after a snowstorm on a January morning, the sliding gate is vastly more functional. The steam coming out of our property manager's ears was notable.
Don't they make something like an overhead gate, similar to an overhead garage door that they go up?
I suppose,
I think that would exceed the 4-foot limitation.
well, it might be behind the second lot line. Again, 6 inches behind where this gate is.
Okay,
And it's also expensive and we would need to drill into the state building for that.
Right.
Sharon?
Oh, yes, hi.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
yeah,
Okay, thank you. My name is Sharon Busher and I don't live downtown, but I live in Burlington. And form-based code was put in place so that the applicant could know what the requirements are, so to eliminate surprise. And to, unfortunately for me, be fairly rigid in how it's applied. So I feel for the applicant, although I do believe that what I said to begin with was form-based code was put in place so the applicants could know what the criteria were and how to meet those criteria. And so I listened to what Scott Guston had to say with the fact that although there's a cost, you could comply with the code by moving it back about a foot. And I was trying to think of ways that would work for the applicant and provide the safety that the individual said was necessary because she worked late at night, or anybody working late at night coming into that alley. So I'm trying to balance all of that. And my thought was 2 fences, and that's even more cost and too laborious. So reluctantly, I feel that I feel like a variance should only be applied very cautiously, and I'm sad to say that I feel that the applicant hasn't come forward with any creative solutions. And so that's what I always hope, that when given an opportunity, the applicant comes forward and works with the city to meet their needs and to comply with our regulations. So that's it. Thank you.
Rena?
I was just wondering if other materials had been considered or reviewed. Like, I know you can do wood sliding fences and things like that. I actually have one at my house, so I'm just curious, have you looked at other potential materials?
We've considered other materials and it's more expensive and costly in a very difficult environment downtown. If that would get us a 6-foot fence, I'm sure we could consider it.
Okay. Hello, Grant, Council Grant.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thanks. My name is Milo Grant. I am started my 2nd term as city councilor for the Central District, which is wards 2 and 3 and includes the downtown area. Previous to being a city councilor, I was a police commissioner. So community safety has really been something that I've been knee deep in now, going on for almost 6 years. I definitely hear what is saying, and I definitely appreciate all the comments about, the questions about how this offense could be more accommodating so that it is, to code or as close as possible. But there's this other side of me. At the last meeting, I was hoping to say something about, I was listening, and I have to admit I was taken aback from a comment when someone asked if the police could be called regarding some of these issues. And then I looked to see who was actually on the board, and I realized this board, based on what's on the city's website, doesn't have any representation from the Central District, because anyone from the Central District would know that the police do not come for these matters. And that is part of the problem, and that is why businesses and residences are having to put up more fencing. We have an unprecedented issue with the number of unhoused in our city. We have never seen this many people. We don't have facilities for people to use the bathroom. We have another issue. There is some overlap with substance use disorder. Not all people who suffer from substance use issues are unhoused, and not all unhoused suffer from substance use issues, but there is this overlap. So it's a combination of people needing to do basic bodily functions and people who are suffering from substance use disorder. The alleyways downtown, vestibules, overhangs, all these places have become areas where people are sometimes simply looking for shelter and relieving themselves to doing other things that are illegal, as mentioned earlier. In an ideal situation, we shouldn't have to take these things into consideration. But our situation downtown right now is less than ideal. There are some real things going on that are making property owners and business owners have to think out of the box in order to protect themselves, their businesses, their employees, and the residents who live downtown. I would, as a quick aside, like to recommend that we really do some education about the code around fencing. As a city councilor, I really haven't, I'm not familiar with it the way I need to be. I've only recently, because of these issues with more fencing going up in different places, become more aware. So I really think there needs to be something looked at in terms of what education, how people maneuver the website, things like that. But I am speaking up, asking the board to be as lenient as possible given the circumstances. This is not something that people want to do. They don't want to do this expense, but if they don't do this expense, it's going to cost them in other ways. And then they can't get deliveries, they can't get services. This was all initiated by the fact that people were refusing to go into that alleyway, you know, for picking up garbage, for deliveries. And that affects the business, that affects tenants. So I'm just asking that these things be taken into consideration. And I understand it's not something that is it is normal, but we're not under normal circumstances at this time. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for that.
Got a quick note on the materials.
You may make a quick note on the materials.
I think in putting this up, our interests were speed and ease of use for materials used. And also to reflect the hopeful temporary nature of the gate. And that if we were to invest more time in design and, you know, nicer materials, that would suggest that this is more of a permanent condition. Again, we'll take it down tomorrow.
Pressing that as an optimistic view.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, you know, if you want to put in a, you know, $50,000 gate, like, sure, but like, we're gonna want to see some timeline on that. You know, if we feel our alleyway is secure, we'll take the thing down tomorrow morning.
Okay. Well, this is the second time we've heard this. I think we've had good testimony and we're gonna close the public hearing now and we'll deliberate on it this evening.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is 72 Temple Street. This is Green Mountain Habitat for Humanity. ZP 24526. Request for your refuse after the fact, tree removal and new plantings. We saw this previously and asked to reopen it to get subsequent replanting plan. I think you're back with that. Or a planting plan of some kind.
Yeah, you wanted actually 3 separate plans. You want the existing conditions plan.
Yep.
Landscape design, then you wanted the landscape design overlaid on the existing conditions plans. We provided all 3.
Okay, that's refreshing my recollection, Liz. Thank you. So can I get everyone who wants to speak on this to raise their right hand? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under the pains and penalties of perjury? By all means, you may state.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, great, thank you. Yes. And so just introduce yourself quickly and walk us through with what you brought back for us to consider tonight.
I'm Robin Pierce, I work for Greenmount Habitat for Humanity. And we have been working with the Vermont Natural Landscape Association on this project. So they did a site visit, which is where they mapped out the existing trees and then did landscape design overlap them. Its own use, but what was there previously was mostly invasive species, mostly buckthorn. So this plan, this proposed only provides native species, a variety of native species that give texture, color, different times of the year. And we're very fortunate to get the Vermont Natural Landscape Association to doing this as a pro bono project for us. And probably will get planted, things go well towards the end of the summer. Generally, they're very busy during this time of year through the summer, so they do the volunteer work towards the end of their season.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you want to name it, you know.
No, we have the plans.
Okay.
The plans are pretty clear. I'm wondering if everybody has any plans. I would like to know what the neighbors think of them, because obviously there are some strong opinions about this, and I'd like to hear from them, because I think the plans, I understand them. I'm curious if the RVs are two other questions. You say they would be planted this year, 2025?
Yes, absolutely.
Anybody have any questions for the applicant, the DRB?
Well, I guess the plantings looks good in terms of replacing trees and things like that. There was part of the discussion that had to do with water runoff on the property. And plans don't specifically address that, even though they sort of imply how it's addressed. Wasn't there supposed to be some direction along the edge of the?
Yes, the original approval included a stormwater retention basin. It is just to the left of the driveway.
Yeah.
As you drive up. I think there probably needs to be a little bit of an adjustment there. A lot of the water goes into it, 100%.
It overflows down the bank. So that's what the intention would be.
Yes,
Fix that.
absolutely. In fact, I went there in training just to take note of what was occurring.
Any days in the last month it's been raining?
Yes, one of those days.
Okay.
What is the approximate age or height of some of these trees when they are planted?
We don't know. They're given to us for free. So we just don't know. Standard would be 2.5 inch caliber. That is standard trees most people plant. So it would be about.
So there's some other people here to speak on this. I'd like to hear from them if you don't mind. Slide over. Sir, ma'am, one of you would like to speak first?
You can go first. No, you go. You.
Dealing with chemo brand. Using some color. I could not understand all it was said.
He said he solved it.
I want to go back to the last meeting that we had here. And I don't know if it was an executive session or not, but Miles made a motion.
Mm-hmm.
It dealt with an accurate inventory of the existing trees.
Yes, sir.
Along with a proposed tree planting plan.
Correct.
And that the plan should be revised.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm using that as the base. Well, I looked on your website. Okay, and obviously I saw that, which is what I have, which is a identification of existing trees. And then there were, this was presented. And identifies April 27th date. And I looked at this plan and I see the same identical plan that is referred to as the revised plan of last December. So I see no change, nothing different. So in terms of that, a revised planning plan was not submitted, my opinion. And then there was this one, which is nothing more than an overlay of the existing trees with this plan. So again, the revised planting plan, I do not see. Since then, someone requested a copy of that motion. And I guess Mr. Gaba.
Yep.
Okay, submitted it to Steve Gromier and Scott Justin. Okay. And I responded to that, to the board.
We have that in our package, yes.
I did not see that on your website,
You
in your folder.
we do have your email.
Well, no, it was a hand-delivered letter.
Okay, we don't have that.
You don't?
Do we?
Yes.
We do?
The background information and proposed transcripts.
This was dated, this February was dated the 27th of February.
Yep.
I hand-delivered it to this office, addressed the board.
Yes, we
You saw it.
yes, and we
got
have
it.
it.
And basically to identify some planting division relative to,
John Arborvitae.
yeah, in terms of, anyway. I also noticed on the website, staff comments. I'm not sure how these are used. But the staff comments were generated by Scott Justin again. Now, he's listed as one of the people associated with Habitat for Humanity. So I find some conflict. But anyway, in these revised, or in these staff comments, dated May 6th, under section A, like highlighted, it starts out with the property to the west is vacant. It's a statement. Then he goes on to dealing with the property to the east, which is fine. There's nothing more stated with regards to the property to the west, which is what I'm addressing in this. So I find that a little disturbing that I get ignored or whatever. I mean, that's how I view it. So, and then at the bottom, conditions of approval. Now, I remember hearing the board identify that because of the past experiences we've had, okay, in terms of planting was to be done before approval could be made, before the permit would be approved. Scott restates it, saying the planting could be done 6 months after, or up to 6 months after. I don't understand who's in charge. I don't understand why Scott decides to change it, from what I recall hearing from the board. And in terms of privacy, that's what I'm addressing. I'd like to get some privacy back, so I don't have to see this. I can continue. I got a overhead from your file showing trees before they were removed, and they didn't have to be removed. I don't know if I can just continue. Any questions?
When you looked at the inventory of the current trees that were in place?
Yes,
Did that look accurate to you?
I'm gonna say reasonably so. I did not go back and inspect from that standpoint.
And then you,
That section of trees, okay, inventory of trees really doesn't affect this.
right, because there's no,
They're
there's
gone,
no,
They're gone, yeah.
and I'm sure the other property to the east.
and your property to the west, your point about it being vacant, are you saying it's not vacant, your home is there, or it is vacant and you own it?
It is vacant. I do own it.
Okay.
And I did have privacy. Yeah, and the trees that were removed, but they didn't have to be. And they weren't on the original site plan and approval to build a structure, et cetera. And when they came through with on second application, I guess, request or where, well, let's, we gotta remove some more trees that were appropriate or however it was worded, okay? None of these trees that were removed were in anybody's way, didn't affect drainage, it was, you know, and in terms of planting, the only planting that was done that I have been able to see was, call it grass or vegetation from, you know, the soils that were exposed. No trees, no shrubs, I've not seen any of that planted.
Yeah, the planting plan does need to be approved before that can be moved forward with. I guess the other question that I have, because I do see, it looks like additional trees in the proposed plan compared to what we looked at before. Your request is that instead of the, what do we have? There's 3 trees and then 2 evergreens. Your request is for the giant arborvitae.
What trees are you referring to?
On this diagram along the west.
On the west?
You mean this tree, this is a supposed tree right here?
No,
That's a proposed planting.
Oh, this is the supposed tree?
No.
Okay. Sorry. This one,
Yeah, so any of those,
yes.
Any of those, but I think what's also recently been added are the larger circles, correct, Robin?
Correct.
But what's missing from the original one that was discussed last time was the row of arborvitae.
That's right.
And they're not on here now, and so the screening ability of this plan is a little less than what it was originally.
Yes.
And those were located right there. So I mean, they could be added into this plan. And as screening. You know, but that's a big difference.
I think we have a good sense of that. That's very helpful for us, sir. Are there? You have some other concerns? Yes, ma'am?
Yeah, I just have a couple, but
I'm sorry, I don't agree with the planning to the west in terms of what was submitted as the revised number 2 winter of, this is winter 2025, so it's a wrong date. We haven't hit the winter of 2025 yet. But anyway, this is the revised plan of before we're talking about. And on the west, there's no change.
Okay.
There's a little bit of change on the east.
Yeah, it says on the
But my
east,
side, no
there's
change.
6 new evergreens on the east and 3 new proposed trees along the east.
Anyway, so highly disappointed with communication with, you know, who's in charge. You know, I got 3 different names, Habitat Humanity. They don't respond to phone calls or emails. And again, my viewpoint is that they do what they want to do, irrespective of, if you want to say ordinance is the law. The adjacent property owners.
We've had a lot of after the fact requests.
Yes.
So from this company, for this board, and take them pretty seriously, places us in a difficult position. So Thank you for that, appreciate it.
Any other questions?
No, I think we understand it. We are familiar with this project. We do remember it coming before us. We do know the issues. It's relatively clear that there was an exceedance of the permanent allowance, and so we want to hear your comments on what's not here or what is here. Thank you.
Me?
You.
So I'm Lisa, I live here in the property to east. I think you have some of the comments from my husband and from Ally, who's owns the other side of our
Ms.
property.
Lancetta.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I don't completely understand this, but also I'll just say that my concerns are a couple. One is, I recall we did ask to, or maybe meet with us or speak with us prior to or at some point, but they didn't. We didn't hear anything from the landscapers. I don't think the issue of the 60-degree slope and how the trees are gonna be planted and maintained in that has been addressed.
And that slope is from that parking area down, right?
Correct, and my husband put in a picture of it, so you can get the idea. And then.
How's it held up this spring?
Looks good, it's got like grass this tall. I don't
Any
know.
runoff, any excessive runoff,
Yeah,
sedimentation?
it's, it's hard to tell because
The other
it was
side.
so bad and I don't know. I'm gonna say yeah, but I can't say that for sure. So there's that, and then the only other thing that I wanted to say is I'm a little shocked by the way Habitat for Humanity appears to just not care at all. Like I couldn't hear. It's sort of shocking to me, like what they've done, and I'm sorry that they have to get this for free, but unfortunately, if they had had a little better control over their excavator and supervised him or whatever a little better, they wouldn't have to be probably planting so many trees and trying to get them for free. Because of their insurance. And then I'll just say it's so sad. I don't know if you looked at Barry's pictures, but it almost brings me to tears every time I walk by his property. Like, it's really emotional what they did. That's it. Thank you very much.
There's two other hands up online. We have John Suma and Sandra. Whoever would like to go next, or whoever's enabled next. John, go ahead.
You're muted.
Hello,
Yep.
you can hear me? Okay, good, thank you. Yep, just to follow up on Lisa's comment, or to answer the question posed to her, has there been any runoff? Of course, there's been runoff. I sent a video, but Mr. Kaba or Miss Kaba was not able to upload it. Okay, and the comments on it or in it, the audio comments explain the runoff. One area of runoff. So behind this duplex, I did get a picture uploaded. It shows a pooling at the low ebb of a recent, short rainfall. Now the high water mark is in there. It's pretty much higher than where it is. And that pools up and flows out like a river to the east and to the west. To the east, I have a picture, you can see it. This is the day after the picture. So it's still running down straight to that pile of rocks they never removed, even though the city ordered them to remove the rocks that they illegally threw on the wall. They took out most of the rocks, but they left this huge pile there. And the river runs right into that rock pile and under it and down into our property. As far as causing visible runoff, meaning damage, I'm inspecting trees. I have people coming out to do that as well, experts. A lot of the trees are beginning to lean in that property line area. We don't know the damage because, as you probably know, damage is underground and erosion and integrity happens underground.
The question I was asking is, how has the slope's stability held up? And the answer I'm hearing is there's runoff, but it's not as if that there's a slough
Well,
of.
on the slope itself, where the picture I uploaded, you can see it there, that approximately 60 degrees slope. There, as far as I can tell, there isn't any, degrading of the slope itself. But I haven't gone up and inspected it. I haven't really crawled around in that area. All I did was walk above it and take a picture, as you can see. But anyway, there is more flooding that I identified. I wanted to put that in the record. That hasn't been addressed. And because the upload of the video was not successful, my audio comments are missing, and that makes unclear the actual comments I submitted to you associated with the pictures. Okay. So anyway, there's two rivers flowing out of the backyard every time it rains, and they're running, one is to the west, running down along the side of the property to the street, and the east side runs right into our property. It's a river running straight into our property. That has not been addressed by the current system that's been installed, and there is no current plan to address that I'm aware of, or anywhere I could see in any of the planning. So I wanted to make sure that's in the record. It's a pretty serious matter, and if you go back there and look yourselves, on any heavy rain day, you'll see that whole pooling and the flow out. And it's leaving, the visual remnants I showed in the picture. So the other issue is the trees that are supposedly planned for the east side. I still don't have any clarity from landscapers who, I believe, last meeting here were ordered or asked through Habitat to reach out to us and the neighbors abutting the property to discuss the plans. We never heard from them. We don't even know who they are. Maybe I missed something there, but we would like to discuss their tree planting plan. And I've requested that there be additional trees and a specific type that will be more viable. They won't specify the type. We have no idea exactly what they're planning to do. So how can we respond here without any evidence, any facts? So I want to make sure that's in the record. We have no information to even comment on at this point, aside from a vague mention of several trees, 2, I suppose, evergreens, and 3 non-evergreens, deciduous trees. So I would like more information. Anybody here know what they're planning to do? It'd be great to share it. And I think that's for now the only comments I have.
Sandra?
Okay. Did you hear all that?
We did, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Your comments. Sandra?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, so I live in the back of that property, to to the far right, to the far left, if you're looking at the back of the house. And what I'm concerned about is I actually met with Mike, the director of Habitat, in August, about our backyard and now our complete lack of privacy. And actually, what's really concerning is we have, our view now is of this roof protruding from the back of our yard.
Sandra, which property are you?
I am 2 down from Bernie Sanders.
Thank you.
You might be surprised I don't know that address. What's your address? I just want to look it up.
247 Van Patten Parkway.
Okay, thank you.
And
Keep going.
actually, when I'm looking at these designs, the property line that is drawn on here is not right. Bernie kept a big chunk of that land that this house was built on, so the property line juts way in. But I'm gonna just talk about my piece that, we can see down to the street below now. I can see the lights from all the houses below. They cut so much evergreen out of there that it's like a straight shot. And it's really like looking at this like roof protruding in the back of our yard. I don't even know, I haven't even walked up to it, if there's like a cliff there or what's going on, but I've looked through these pictures and there's nothing back there that's, I talked to Mike in August about cedars and putting green back in there, and I thought that he was in agreement with that. I've had an arborist come to our yard to look at what's here now, and, the price tag for us is like $10,000 to put privacy back in our house, when really this shouldn't have been removed. They talked about not removing the canopy in the back, and that's absolutely not true. It's so sparse now that, I mean, there's just nothing, there's birch there now. I do have photographs of what it was and what it was like through these processes of like not, the idea was that they cut trees and they weren't gonna cut anymore, and they kept cutting them and like we're left with like nothing. And the trees that I see in these plans are like these little like maples, which are gonna do nothing for like, several years. I'm like 57 years old. I don't have time to like wait for these trees to, give us any privacy, any like we had. I think that's it.
Okay. We hear the concern. Thank you. Do you want to respond to any questions? Do you want to respond to any of that? Applicant, or do you want us to just take that under advisement and talk about it?
Well, what's being proposed is the standard tree that would be planted in most landscape designs in the county and state. It's generally what's most available at landscape nurseries. And that's what we're proposing. They did a really good job, I think, in specifying native varieties, which weren't there before. So not just the pleasant thing to look at, but it also good for the environment in general, whether it's bees or native species. This will fit more in line with what would have been there if the site had been managed. And what happened because it wasn't managed and invasive species come in, they outcompete the native flora and fauna. So, we're starting from where we put when the excavator finished its work, and we're trying to bring this to the point where it's not just replacing what was there, making what we're proposing better than what was there.
I think you got a long way to go.
We do.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody would say, gee, if you could get to where it was, that might be pretty good. I would say, even if the trees are being donated, we probably still need to know exactly what they are and the calibers. That's typically what goes on.
Yeah, well, the landscape plan does give the species, it doesn't give the caliber. They're red maple, sugar maple, linden, white oak, red oak. And for evergreens, we've got balsam fir, white spruce, and northern white cedar. Then there's some larger shrubs and lower shrubs of dogwoods, which isn't footberry, several types of viburnum, 3 silex.
And missing sort of what was requested before was the arbor vitae hedge.
Well, there are some other vitae. That's fine.
Was something, yeah, but that's not on the current plan.
We'd be happy to put more in, that would be more. The last time I was here, actually, I offered to meet with the neighbors. And the plannings were going in and have them decide basically where the arborvitae should go from their perspective.
Just one last question from me, because we had discussed this last time and we've not really come around to this point, but just to confirm, this planting plan does address the stormwater runoff plan and is in adherence with that plan
Yes.
despite the site changes.
Yes.
More questions for the applicant? Scott? Saw your hand this time.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the planting plan does include the size of the trees to be planted. Says 3 to 5 gallon container, 1 to 2 inch caliper. We tend to like to see them on the 2 to 2.5 inch span, but it is noted.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Ask or answer?
Ask.
Go ahead.
What I submitted, does that have any influence or any bearing of this?
It has bearing and it has an influence.
Thank you.
How much? We'll see. All right, with that, I will close the public hearing on this item. I'm sorry, Sandra, do you have, is your hand still up?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
What I'm wondering about, like, I mean, I keep hearing like the plantings and things need to be free. And I don't really understand that. I think that, you know, what was taken out of there that gave us privacy should be put back in. And I've been doing a lot of extensive, like, searching these like garden places. And there's plenty of like 5-foot cedar and like different kinds of cedar and different kinds of like white pine. That's what was taken out. Like, so now you're gonna put these like spindly maple trees in there. That's not gonna solve anything.
That is something we have to take into consideration. And the cost of compliance or is not something this board considers.
I'm sorry, I didn't the what? The cost?
Cost of compliance.
Okay.
I.e. someone saying that's too expensive is not something we consider.
Okay. All right. I just think it's like, I mean, I just think it's really important to know,
That's
like.
generally a way for people to not say they have to be free. We don't get into the cost of how much it costs for someone to comply. We try to make sure what is done meets the intent of the ordinance and the permit. So to your point, no, they don't have to be free. That's not a consideration we take into our.
I mean, I think it's really important to say how much this has impacted our like use and enjoyment of our property that we've lived in for 20 years. It's huge. And I don't know, it just seems like like we're really not involved in Habitat for Humanity's plan.
Appreciate that. I want everyone to reflect though that these are trees on someone else's property. So we have to balance those property owners' interests with other people's desires as well. That is an important balance. I am going to be very terse with this. I think we have heard what we need to hear. I'm going to close the public hearing because we could be here all night going back and forth, and I'm not going to let that happen. So we've closed the public hearing on this agenda item. We'll deliberate on it tonight. Thank you.